Hollywood was built on beauty, but which faces truly defined it? From silver screen legends to modern icons, these men did more than act. They became objects of desire, commanding rooms with a look. Behind every perfect smile lay pressure, heartbreak, and fame's steep cost. Some turned their looks into myth, others into a gilded cage. Who were they, and what secrets hid behind those flawless faces? Meet the actors whose beauty shaped an era, charisma, glamour, and quiet tragedy in every portrait. 15. Henry Cavill. There are handsome men, and then there are men whose features look as if sculptors had been given permission to defy nature. Henry Cavill falls squarely into that latter category. His profile reads like cinema itself, a jawline so sharp it seems almost architectural, blue eyes that can be both soft and relentless, a presence that amplifies even the quietest moments. He does not simply enter a scene, he inhabits it, bending every frame to his will. From Man of Steel to The Witcher, he channels a classic, almost mythic masculinity that feels both ancient and utterly contemporary. Beneath that flawless facade is someone who knows what it means to be vulnerable. Cavill has spoken about awkward school days, about being picked on for his size and shyness, and that past lives in the steadiness he now projects. That steady reserve is not indifference but careful craftsmanship, a discipline that transformed an uncertain youth into a consummate professional. He is not flashy or ostentatious. His approach is precise, patient, quietly, gentlemanly, in an industry that often favors spectacle. Beauty, however, has been a double-edged sword. Early on, he was dismissed by some casting minds as too beautiful to feel real to audiences, as if attractiveness somehow negated skill. He answered that dismissal with performances that combine physicality and nuanced pain, proving that luminous looks and layered acting are not mutually exclusive. Whether he is a savior, a spy, or a monster hunter, he brings an old-fashioned elegance that few contemporaries can match. Away from cameras, Cavill retreats into personal passions, his dog, immersive gaming, long solitary walks. He could easily dominate headlines, yet he resists that impulse, preferring to let his work speak for him. Perhaps that restraint is the secret of his magnetism, a beauty that commands attention not by shouting for it, but simply by being present. 14. Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt became less a movie star than a cultural shorthand for glamour. His face, golden hair, carved cheekbones, that half-smile came to define the classic leading man. But his appeal always held a contradiction, a soft-spoken sensitivity wrapped in a restless, rebellious energy. He seemed too beautiful to be believable, and yet his performances proved there was more beneath the surface. His arrival in Thelma and Louise, leaning against a motel wall in a cowboy hat with a crooked grin, altered the conversation about masculinity, dangerous and seductive, but oddly poetic. Hollywood rushed to anoint him, yet he resisted being packaged. Instead of coasting on looks, he sought roles that complicated the image: the battered investigator in Seven, the provocative provocateur in Fight Club, the weary soul in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. With each part, he chipped at the glossy exterior and revealed vulnerability, pain, and messy humanity. Fame brought its costs. Intense scrutiny, tabloid narratives, fractured relationships, and periods of self-medication turned admiration into confinement. He has spoken about numbing the noise and the solitude that followed. Lately, he appears to have found some peace producing challenging films, pursuing sculpting, and embracing quieter rhythms. The sex symbol of youth has matured into an actor and artist whose attractiveness is inseparable from experience. His face now reads like a lived-in map, not vanity, but the marks of survival and reinvention. 13. Paul Newman. Paul Newman's attractiveness was never merely surface-deep, it carried a kind of gravity. His face possessed a classical balance that photographers admired, but it was his eyes, cold, luminous, endlessly expressive, that made him unforgettable. They could register stubbornness, tenderness, or sorrow without a single line of dialogue, and when he held a gaze, it felt intimate rather than performative. Newman's beauty suggested thought as much as it did form. At a time when studio images pushed men into myths, he opted for nuance. He sought respect more than adulation, and his turning points in films like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and Cool Hand Luke revealed more than a striking visage. They revealed a restless core. He gravitated toward characters who were at once charismatic and flawed, men whose attractiveness was amplified by their scars. Underneath the handsome exterior was a deliberate unwillingness to be merely ornamental. His life reinforced the image on screen. He and Joanne Woodward remained partners for well over 5 decades, a rare constant amid Hollywood churn. He gave generously to causes he believed in, raced cars with reckless joy, and managed to keep a grounded presence despite fame. Rather than masking aging, he embraced it, arguing that a character should look like the life he's lived and that refusal to pander to vanity is part of what keeps him relevant. Long after he's gone, his face and the roles he shaped continue to echo in how we picture male beauty. Paul Newman was more than a starlet's ideal. He was a template for what attractiveness can mean when combined with integrity. 12. George Clooney. George Clooney became more than a movie star. He became shorthand for effortless charm. The salt and pepper at his temples, that half smile that can disarm, a voice that suggests danger and comfort. At the same time, his appeal is quiet but unavoidable. He never has to shout for attention. Attention simply arrives when he does. Long before the gala suits and statuettes, he slept on a friend's couch and weathered casting room indifference. Then a television role changed the script. The easy confidence, the casual tilt of his head, the way he looks as if he already knows your story turned him from actor to daydream. Hollywood found its modern-day Cary Grant, and he seemed to wear that mantle without effort. Clooney has pushed back against the very look that propelled him. He picked parts that poked at or turned his charm inside out, the clever thief in Out of Sight, the solitary assassin in The American, the weary fixer in Michael Clayton. Behind the polished grin is a man who interrogates fame and the idea of being admired. Off-camera, he mirrors his characters. Deliberate, thoughtful, frequently generous. He directs money and attention toward humanitarian work, uses his visibility to press for justice, and leans on wit to survive an industry obsessed with youth. As his face has gained lines, his presence has only deepened. Real handsomeness, in his example, is less about staying young and more about aging with grace while keeping that mischievous spark that lets the world know he's still in charge. 11. James Dean. He was not merely attractive. James Dean's face read like a mood. There was an untamed quality to him that resisted the neat categories of studio glamour. His jaw cut sharply, his mouth often set in a small, insolent line, and his eyes carried a weary sadness that seemed older than his years. Smiles were rare, and when they came they felt dangerous, as if the momentary softness was a small act of defiance. His ascent to legend was astonishingly swift. In just 3 films, East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant, he crystallized into an emblem of restless youth, yearning, and existential tension. He was not the polished, debonair type. His appeal lay in being raw, unpredictable, and beautifully flawed. Those imperfections transformed into his signature, giving voice to young people who no longer wanted to aspire to flawless restraint. Off-camera, he lived in sync with the roles he chose, quick, passionate, and easily moved. He loved jazz and the roar of racing engines, and he chased moments of quiet as if they were rare treasures. Friends remembered a magnetic, mercurial presence who could slide from bright laughter to sudden somberness in an instant. There was an intensity to him that felt genuine rather than performed. There was also a sense, in the way he carried himself, that he was aware of his own mortality, as if he knew his time was limited. When he died at 24, the loss felt larger than a single career cut short. It was the extinguishing of an icon. The image that lingered, the unruly hair, the leather jacket, the haunted gaze became fixed in the cultural imagination. His beauty was inseparable from his contradiction, the glamour of cinema bound up with a visible fracture. He never had to age to prove his allure. He was frozen, perennially young, and untouchable. Decades on, his name still registers as more than a handsome face. It evokes the allure of rebellion, the burn of a light that blazed too fiercely to last. 10. Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio proves that handsomeness can be a living thing, something that shifts and deepens rather than fading. He began as the camera's favorite: sunlit hair, carved cheekbones, eyes that could seem both innocent and dangerous. Titanic turned him into a global obsession, his grin plastered across dorm rooms and glossies. But his real triumph was not holding on to prettiness, it was outgrowing it while making it part of his art. Rather than rest as a perpetual heartthrob, he chased risk. He picked roles that invited disorder and complexity, from the sunburned thrill-seeker to the merciless city schemer, from the obsessed tycoon to the primal survivor. With each performance, he chipped away at the tidy idol, showing that his looks were not a liability, but a tool, sharpened by intelligence, honed by restless ambition. He did not merely play characters, he became them. The adolescent dreamer evolved into portrayals of monsters, geniuses, and haunted men. As his face matured, his pull intensified, less about youth, more about force of presence. Off-camera, his life turned into legend. Boats, high-profile companions, and an aura of enigma. He has been both lionized and lampooned for a long bachelor reputation, yet fascination often stems from something subtler than gossip from control. He has managed his story in a way few do, wielding fame without being undone by it. What truly defines his handsomeness is contradiction, a striking face that conceals a relentless, exacting artist. He is a rare performer who did not age out of relevance, but into a lasting legacy, flawed, driven, and impossible to forget. 9. Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth has the sort of presence that feels mythic, broad-shouldered, sea-colored eyes, and a face that reads like a modern classic. When he first became Thor, swinging that hammer with effortless ease and a disarming grin, he arrived not just as a movie star but as a new template for Hollywood appeal. Yet his appeal is more than physical. It lives in his laughter, his willingness to make fun of himself, and a humility that keeps him relatable. Interviews reveal a man who teases fame rather than worships it, a devoted husband and father who would often choose surfing back home over endless red carpets. For a time, his looks risked eclipsing his craft, but he answered the doubters by deepening his characters, turning a stoic warrior into someone capable of real vulnerability and quick wit. Performances in Rush and Extraction stripped away the myth and showed emotional weight beneath the muscle. Off-camera, he remains grounded and loyal, effortlessly photogenic, without ever feeling manufactured. What makes his handsomeness striking is that it seems elemental, like sunlit water impossible to fake and hard to forget. In the end, Hemsworth reminds us that true attractiveness is less about flawless features and more about a balance of strength, humor, and heart. 8. Cary Grant. He did more than define Hollywood handsomeness. He created its standard. Before filters and celebrity image consultants, there was Cary Grant, always tailored, fluid in movement, quietly magnetic. His appeal was never brash or overwhelming. It was smooth, exacting, and disarming, like a perfectly timed line delivered with an unreadable smile. He could enter a room, tilt his head the slightest bit, and make everyone feel he harbored a private joke behind that grin. Born Archibald Leach in Bristol, he came from nothing and remade himself into a study in polished charm. Elegance was not an accident for him. It was the result of reinvention. Over the course of his life, he honed an image that mixed wit, mystery, and a refined masculinity rather than the rugged archetype. In films such as North by Northwest and An Affair to Remember, he personified a level of sophistication that generations of performers have since tried to capture. Every move, every sidelong glance, seemed instinctively choreographed. He did not merely play a handsome man, he inhabited one. That veneer masked real fragility. Behind the immaculate suits and careful composure were deep insecurities that fame could not smooth over. Childhood hardship, family fractures, and private grief tracked the man beneath the star. He even turned to unconventional therapy in search of reconciliation between Archibald and Cary. That imperfect humanity is what gave his polished exterior true weight. Even now, long after his passing, his silhouette lingers in the way modern actors carry themselves. Clooney's ease, Firth's restraint, Gosling's cool detachment all echo his influence. Cary Grant was not only beautiful, he weaponized refinement, wearing a cultivated mask that concealed a complicated, very human man. 7. Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling proves that silence can be sultry. In an industry that prizes bigger gestures and louder displays, his magnetism is built from restraint. His looks do not demand attention. They hang in the air. High cheekbones, those half-closed eyes, a smirk that hints but never reveals. Together, they create a pull that draws you nearer without a push. He is one of those performers who make stillness feel charged. His path was patient rather than instant. From early days on the Disney Channel to romantic hits like The Notebook and intimate dramas such as Blue Valentine, he has chosen depth over flash. He has never been the kind of attractive that overwhelms. Instead, he invites curiosity, encourages people to lean in and wonder. When Drive arrived, that quiet intrigue became legend. The taciturn driver turned into a cultural icon, a stoic anti-hero, a modern-day James Dean, a beauty that could stop you with a look. Off-camera, he seems almost ordinary in the best way, a committed partner to Eva Mendes, a protective parent, a musician who writes in private. He shuns excess attention as if wary of it, demonstrating that charisma need not be loud. In interviews, he chuckles softly, downplays his appearance, and appears slightly embarrassed by the fuss. That modesty only fuels the fascination. In La La Land, the way he smiled at Emma Stone under the stars felt less like acting and more like chemistry. His brand of handsomeness is rare now. Reflective, poised, quietly potent. He does not act beautiful, he simply is, with an ease that lingers. Ryan Gosling is more than a leading man. He is the steady pulse in a city that thrives on chaos. Proof that being quietly unforgettable is perhaps the most dangerous kind of charm. 6. Marlon Brando. He did more than change acting. He changed what people thought handsome could be. Before him, film heartthrobs were tidy and polished. Brando arrived like a live wire, raw, combustible, utterly present. His appeal was not textbook symmetry, it was risky. The heavy lids, the carved mouth, the coiled strength barely contained by a white tee in a streetcar named Desire, he did not read as a manufactured star. He read as temptation. People both coveted and feared him. Admirers wanted him. Contemporaries wanted to be him. Yet Brando treated his looks as an awkward fact, not a trophy. When journalists crowned him as the most beautiful man in the country, he would dismiss it with a crooked laugh. To him, beauty was incidental. Influence and force were the aim. He poured that force into work that felt lived in, volatile, alarmingly true. In On the Waterfront and The Godfather, he did not perform so much as occupy a presence. His voice, low, frayed, oddly intimate, could turn a single sentence into love and menace at once. Off-screen, he was as unruly as he was magnetic. He resisted studios, fame, expectations, even his own myth. He would alter his body, undermine his image, retreat to a private island when he wished. Even as time softened his features, the pull remained. That once youthful defiance matured into a stubborn rebuke of Hollywood's worship of youth. Brando's allure was never about polish. It was about reality. He proved that a man could be beautiful and burdened, tender and brutal, marked and unforgettable. He taught the screen that vulnerability could be a form of strength, anger could be oddly seductive, and flaws could draw you in. Decades on, he is still the benchmark for dangerous allure, a reminder that the most magnetic performers are those who break the rules of attraction rather than follow them. 5. Tom Cruise. He isn't merely good-looking, he seems propelled. Tom Cruise's appeal is kinetic. It never quite sits still for a portrait because it's always in the middle of something, a grin caught mid-challenge, a jawline set against motion. That boyish smile that refused to age, the machine-sculpted features, the electric focus in his eyes, they all read as part of a larger performance, a readiness to move before the camera even asks. When he skimmed across that living room floor in Risky Business, he didn't simply appear on screen, he seized it. What sets his attractiveness apart is the way he blends discipline with volatility. He projects razor-sharp control, while suggesting something combustible beneath the surface. Whether he's at the controls in Top Gun, racing through explosions and narrow escapes in Mission Impossible, or exposing vulnerability in Jerry Maguire, his looks are inseparable from action, a momentum that signals ambition, danger, and intent. He is not a posable statue of charm, he is the charm in pursuit. That relentless drive has a shadow. His pursuit of perfection has made him admired and polarizing in equal measure. His off-camera intensity, the demanding schedules, the famously exacting standards, the personal beliefs that drew headlines have layered his image with intrigue and controversy. Still, through the gossip and the scrutiny, he remains steady. The smile persists, the discipline stays intact. People may puzzle over him, but they cannot tear their eyes away. As years accumulated, he refused to yield to the usual arc, learning to fly, throwing himself from aircraft, clinging to the sides of buildings. Every stunt became a manifesto against fading into the background. His attractiveness runs deeper than features. It is forged from motion, risk, and an unshakable conviction in his own capacities. In that relentless striving, his face became more than handsome, it turned into a myth of defiance. 4. Johnny Depp. His attractiveness refuses to be tidy or easily categorized. It demands interpretation. Johnny Depp's looks are not textbook handsome, and that is precisely what sears the image into your mind. The angular cheekbones, shadowed gaze, and a jawline that suggests stories rather than symmetry create a face that seems borrowed from a different age or an alternate fable. He reads less like a conventional star and more like a canvas you keep returning to, not for flawless beauty, but for something strange and vividly alive. When he first surfaced as Edward Scissorhands, Depp shifted the idea of male allure. He was never cast as the polished leading man. He became the outsider, the melancholy romantic, the whimsical rogue. In roles from Captain Jack Sparrow to the Mad Hatter, he blurred the boundary between the grotesque and the irresistible, proving attraction often springs from character and conviction rather than perfect features. Every gesture feels theatrical. Every look carries a mix of tenderness and menace. Away from the screen, his life has been as dramatic as his parts. The intensity that fuels his magnetism has also steered him into self-inflicted storms. The romances, the struggles with personal struggles, the very public legal battles turned his presence into a contested terrain where myth collided with the messy realities of a man. Even amid controversy and decline, that peculiar pull lingered. When he enters a space, he brings both disturbance and fascination. Depp's appeal is rooted in feeling more than form. It speaks to misfits and dreamers, to anyone who has endured disappointment without softening who they are. He is at once a rebel and a romantic, flawed and exalted. In an industry that prizes polish and predictability, he carved a niche from eccentricity and uncompromising choices. He remains one of Hollywood's most puzzling icons of allure, a beautiful ruin, a haunted poet, a reminder that imperfection, when honest, can be utterly compelling. 3. Jude Law. There is something deliciously contradictory about Jude Law's looks, impeccably classical and a little bit wild, almost saintly and sharply dangerous at the same time. His face could be carved for a gallery, yet those eyes always suggest a story that has gone off the rails. The blonde hair, the upright bearing, the subtle curl of a smile feel like relics of an earlier era, when men wore tailored suits like armor and flirted with risk as if it were inevitable. His attractiveness is clever and deliberate. He understands the power of his appearance and uses it with the precision of a practiced actor. Across films such as The Talented Mr., Ripley, Closer, and Cold Mountain Law cultivated an on-screen magnetism that mixed allure with ruin. He often portrays men who are brilliant and fragile, charismatic, and on the verge of collapse, faces that conceal their fractures too well. When he steps into a scene, the mood softens and tightens at once. His presence does not demand, it seduces, and moviegoers have been drawn in again and again. Public life exposed the vulnerabilities behind the glamour. Tabloid dramas, gossip, and intense scrutiny cracked the flawless image. Rather than disappearing, he absorbed those experiences and shifted. The boyish appeal matured into a quieter, more formidable authority. In The Young Pope, he turned that attraction into something austere and commanding, a beauty that felt almost doctrinal. Jude Law's appeal has never been about simple perfection. It's about the tension between polish and peril, a charm that can be disarming and devastating in equal measure. He remains the kind of actor whose looks do more than please the eye. They unsettle it, invite you closer, and linger long after the credits roll. 2. Robert Redford. He was the picture of sunlit American beauty, effortless, relaxed, and quietly striking. In an era of glossy, manufactured stars, his attractiveness felt honest, as if wind and light had shaped his features rather than a publicity machine. The blonde hair, the clear eyes, the easy half-smile that balanced confidence with an undercurrent of melancholy made him magnetic even before a camera rolled. He never seemed to be performing handsomeness. It simply existed in him. That unforced presence became his signature. On screen, in films like Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid and The Sting, he reimagined charm as something composed and unshowy. His rapport with Paul Newman went beyond banter. It was a study in equilibrium. Two actors whose coolness stemmed from self-possession rather than spectacle. He did not overwhelm a scene. He steadied it, offering a center that felt as natural as breathing. Yet beauty and fame did not comfort him. He worried that looks could become a trap, a shallow shorthand that eclipsed deeper work. Rather than surrender to that limitation, he expanded his life in pursuit of substance, moving behind the camera to direct ordinary people, creating a space for independent voices with the Sundance Institute, and reshaping his public image into something more layered and purposeful. Off-screen, he aged without theatrics, growing into a version of himself that carried experience in the lines and silences. His maturity reframed his appeal as wisdom rather than mere youth. Ultimately, his allure was less about features than about what they suggested: authenticity, restraint, and a quiet integrity. Even as time advanced, his presence retained a kind of warm glow that never felt performative. 1. Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper's appeal is the kind that accumulates rather than announcing itself. It creeps up in the quiet way. He holds a look, the weathered calm in his eyes, the half-smile that hints at more beneath. There is an emotional pull to his face, the clear blue gaze, the patient charm, the mix of steadiness and frailty that suggests a life lived and felt deeply. His attractiveness is rooted in dimension, warmth tempered by intensity, magnetism softened by vulnerability. As his career unfolded, Cooper moved beyond the handsome leading man label by letting his characters be messy and truthful. In Silver Linings Playbook, A Star is Born, and Maestro, he revealed a rare honesty in male performances, showing weariness, longing, and the quiet breaks in a man trying to hold himself together. Off-camera, he mirrors that same complexity, centered yet driven, private yet fiercely invested in his craft, deliberate in his choices as an actor and director, devoted as a father and as a collaborator in music. Rather than glamorizing turmoil, he converts it into art. What lingers is not a flawless face, but an empathetic presence. He offers a picture of modern masculinity that is confident without bragging, sensual without artifice, attractive without self-obsession. In a world built on gloss and illusion, Cooper's strength is his authenticity. He closes this chapter not as the sleekest icon, but as the most unmistakably human, a man whose expression keeps speaking after the lights go down. In Hollywood, beauty is a double-edged spotlight. It dazzles and it burns. Handsomeness, we learn, is less about perfect angles than about presence, a story folded into a smile, a scar that catches the light, a hush the camera cannot translate. Some men turned their faces into myth. Others spent their lives trying to step out from under them. All of them showed that true beauty is not still but alive. It shifts, it breaks, it endures. From rebel fire to quiet gravity, from classic poise to raw, mythic force, each face holds the weight of a life lived, not merely to be seen but to be felt. When the lights go down and the mirrors crack, what kind of beauty remains?